Try these simple side dishes to take to your Thanksgiving feast. Hey guys, welcome back to At the Table. Today we are going to be talking about Thanksgiving foods, and most importantly, things that you can take or plan ahead for your Thanksgiving meal so that you're not stressed out day of Thanksgiving cooking or the night before Thanksgiving cooking all of these meals, and you just have something simple that you can take. So what we're going to focus on today is things that can be made ahead a day or 2 days in advance, and they might just need to be heated up, or they're just an easy make it, put it in your fridge, and you can take it cold that way. So what we're starting off with is a Brussels sprout recipe that has bacon and cranberries and pecans in it. So it's a really pretty color. It has that green, the red from the cranberries, and it's very flavorful because it's got bacon in it. The other one we're gonna be doing is a holiday rice salad, and it's also very colorful, very pretty, but it's an easy one just to take with you. So we're gonna start with our Brussels. I went ahead, you need about 12 ounces of Brussels. This is a pound, so it's a little bit more. This is about 16 ounces, but I went ahead and started cut most of them, but I'm gonna do a few on camera here for you. So I've already rinsed these, but you wanna just trim the end of that off. And then I like to cut it in half, being very careful, watching those fingers. And if there's any leaves that are yellow or just don't look really great, like this little leaf here, you just peel that off and throw it in your little bowl here. So that's just excess. You can compost it or throw it away, whatever you do at your home. And Brussels sprouts are one of those things that some people love them, some people are just not a fan. But it has taken me personally a few years to actually start to like Brussels sprouts. They taste very similar to cabbage. So a lot of people call them mini cabbages because they look a lot like a cabbage. But they do have a very different flavor, and to me, they are so good when you roast them in the oven. I prefer them roasted over steamed. So if you have yet to try them roasted, I recommend you taste them. And like I said, I have made these multiple times and just did not care for them. And I had tried several different ways to make them taste differently. And it took me a while to actually start to like them. So it wasn't until last year. So keep trying things. Your taste buds change all the time. Keep trying different things until one day you might find that you do like it. So I just added a little bit of olive oil, and it's about 2 tablespoons, just enough to coat it on the outside, and then we're just gonna give it a good stir here, making sure that all of the sprouts are fully coated, have a little bit of that oil on there so that they can all roast really good. And that's all we're gonna put on them for now is just olive oil. Now you could go ahead and do salt and pepper if you would like, but it's just easier for us just to stick with that. And then when it comes out, we are going to flavor them with a little bit more seasoning and whatnot. Now for roasting, the key to roasting is that your pan anything on your pan is not touching. So making sure that all of those little sprout guys are by themselves, not touching each other. Think of cookies when you're making cookies on a pan and you don't want them to touch, right? Because the cookies expand. For these, when we're roasting, we don't want them to touch so that all of it can get nice and crispy and steamed really well. So try to avoid them touching each other. When they're actually touching, they start to steam in the oven rather than roast. So that is the main difference there. Just try to do your best to not let them touch. And we have our oven on 400. So it is, pretty high. And then we're gonna cook these for about 20 to 25 minutes. We're gonna have to scoot some over to make it fit. But we're gonna finish these. We've almost got them done, and we're gonna throw these in the oven, and we'll see you back in just a second.
Introducing the Star Communications app. All the tools you need in one convenient location. You can access Watch TV everywhere, check local channel lineup, check your Star email, view and pay your Star bill, report troubles, use your Star security app, check your home voicemail, sign up for CrowdFiber, check your Wi-Fi speed. The list keeps going and going. Download for free from the App Store or Google Play.
All right, so we're back. We have our Brussels in the oven, so they're gonna cook for 25 minutes. We'll check on them. You don't need to toss them or anything throughout. You can if you'd like, but it's not really necessary. And we're gonna be busy over here, so we're not gonna worry about that right now. But we are moving on to our holiday rice salad. Now this is a really tasty salad that has tons of color, just looks really good. And one thing about when you are going to a holiday gathering, whether it's Thanksgiving or Christmas or Hanukkah or any of those things, you wanna just make sure that you're bringing some type of dish that is a healthy dish. So this is a key in just trying to be smarter when we're going to different gatherings and things. If you bring something that is a healthy dish, you at least know that one thing there will be a healthy item for you to eat. So keep that in mind. Also, a lot of times we tend to gravitate towards some unhealthy options for Thanksgiving or holidays in general. Perfectly okay. We don't get that all the time. But a lot of times if you bring something that is a healthier option, it will get eaten because people crave something that is fresh, that is a little bit healthier when they're loaded with all of the other things like mashed potatoes, which are my favorite food personally, or you've got the gravy that's really heavy, or you've got stuffing, things that are gonna be a little bit more heavy. They'll eat those things and we all love those things, but it's nice to have something else available to us that's also a little bit more fresh tasting, and it's not gonna feel quite as heavy as those foods. So bring a dish like this. It's a great thing to bring and it will get eaten, I promise. So we are starting with wild rice. I went ahead and cooked our rice ahead of time. You need about, it calls for 7.5 cups in the recipe. We're doing half of the recipe right now because that's just a lot that we would have. But the recipe that will be posted will be double of everything that we are gonna be using today. So this is only about 3.5 cups. This was the only wild rice that I could find at Food Lion, our local store. It is a blend of white, brown, wild, and red rice. So most of these are considered whole grains. The brown rice, the wild rice, and the red rice are all whole grain. The white rice in here is not technically a whole grain, but you want at least half of your grains to be whole. So definitely we are getting at least half of the grains that we're using in this are whole grain. Still a great option, still healthy for you. Do not let this deter you from buying this just because there is some white rice in there. Still perfectly okay. Still a decent amount of fiber in there. All right, so we are gonna go ahead and get chopping. We have green onions in this and we're gonna need, for us, we need 1/2 cup. For the whole recipe, the typical recipe, it's 1 cup. So we are just gonna chop these up. I like to cut things into smaller pieces just because it tends to go a little bit further in your dish. And in something like this, where it's gonna give it that pretty color, it'll give it the pretty color throughout, not just like here and there. So you can actually use the entire green onion, even going down to that white, the white end. Now the white part will be a little bit more similar to like a white onion, and that's actually about 1/2 cup. So we're gonna stop there, but typically I use the entire green onion. Just be mindful that will taste more like regular, a white onion or a yellow onion. So we're just gonna throw that in. I'm not an onion person, but I love green onions. So another one of those things where try it out, see what you think. Green onions, scallions, to me, they are very, very good. All right, and then we also just have some parsley here. We're gonna need about 1/4 cup of parsley. So I'm just gonna break these guys off of that main stem. Now you could also, since these stems are a little bit more tender versus more of a sturdy stemmed herb, you can also just cut it directly on your cutting board, perfectly okay. I'm just used to picking my herbs first. It's something I can't get out of me. So I'm gonna continue to pick these until we have a nice little pile, and we'll see you back in just a second, and I'll chop them up and add them to our salad.
Sweetie, will you turn that down, please?
Keep life exciting, even when it's not. Watch TV everywhere from Star Communications.
All right, I've got my parsley in a nice little pile here, so I'm just gonna chop this up into small little pieces. Now, one thing with fresh herbs is when you chop them, cut them, snap them in half, anything like that, it helps to release that flavor that is in the herbs. So even if you were cooking with herbs and you didn't necessarily want that, maybe it's a leaf and you didn't want that in there, I would just recommend that you cut it in half or chop it up somewhat so that you can release that aroma, and then you can pull it out afterwards. All right, so that's all we need. That's probably about 1/2 cup, which is actually a little more than what we originally needed, so we're just gonna use that much. And then we are gonna be adding the rest of our stuff to it. So we have cranberries. I did buy the craisins that are lower sugar. Now these still have sucralose added, or some type of sugar substitute is still added to these to make them sweet. A lot of times your craisins have sugar in them. So versus your regular raisins, which we're using golden raisins here as well, these are naturally sweet. They do not add sugar to them. So just be mindful of that. Try to find ones that are 100% cranberries, or what we call craisins, cranberry raisins, or try to find the ones that are at least lower sugar. So we've got our cranberries. If you can find dried cherries, those are also, the recipe calls for half cranberries, half dried cherries. I could not find dried cherries, so we're just using all cranberries here. These are pecans that have been chopped up. And then we are also using slivered almonds. We have about 1/8 cup here, but the recipe will call for 1/4 cup. Remember, I'm having everything. We're just gonna use this whole bag because we don't wanna just have 2 little slivers in there. And then that's all that you have in your main bowl. So the next thing that we'll be making is our dressing. Oh, and I will also mention, I could not find fresh mint or dried mint, but the recipe does call for mint. Personally, I'm not a huge mint person, so you can leave that out. It'll still be really tasty, really good. You make it the way that you enjoy it. So I did look for fresh mint, but I couldn't find it, and I didn't look real hard after that. So you make it how you enjoy it. All right, so next we have our orange juice. So you'll need about 1/2 cup of orange juice. Again, this is only 1/4 cup. We will need some apple cider vinegar, which we have here. And we're gonna just shake all of this up into our mason jar. I love making dressings that way. I feel like it makes it just really easy to mix it all together and make it taste good. Leave this out because we also need some olive oil. And you can see this is kind of like a sweet, citrusy dressing. And we've got those pretty dried fruits in our salad as well. So that's gonna give it some good flavor also. Okay, and then we need about half a tablespoon of lime juice. I'm just gonna eyeball it. And we need a little bit of salt and pepper. So just a small sprinkle of salt, like half a teaspoon, not much at all. And then just a little touch of pepper. And then the last thing that we need is a little bit of sugar. So I'm using Splenda. Sugar substitute works great. If you want to use regular sugar, that's also okay. We're only using 2 teaspoons, so we're not using much at all in this. And then we just put our lid on and shake it up. Super simple. And you just want to make sure that that sugar or sugar substitute in there really gets blended in. So give it a good amount of shake just so that that gets mixed in thoroughly. Kind of the acid that's in there will help to break down some of that sugar so it'll be blended. And then we are just going to pour this on top. Now this is one of those recipes that would be even better the next day. So it's something that you could definitely make ahead. It is served chilled, so you want to at least put it in the refrigerator for an hour to 2 hours, and that way it'll start to kind of let the flavors all meld together, taste really nicely, and it'll be good to eat. So this is a great one to make ahead of time just because it will do so well in the fridge. It's easy to travel with since it's refrigerated. You can just take it with you, put it in a cooler, let it refrigerate, and it's good to go. All right, so we have this all done. We are gonna move over to our Brussels sprouts and we'll see you guys back in just a second.
After completing my contract, I still have to buy out of it? Come on. Here's your sign.
Switch to the sign that's keeping home secure and customers happy all over the area. Security from Star Communications. We pride ourselves on fair pricing and quick, friendly service every time.
Somebody try to break into this place?
Security from Star Communications.
All right, so our Brussels sprouts are done. You can see how they have that nice char on them. And just as I said, we didn't flip these or anything, but you can see the bottoms are just as nice and crispy as the top. So it's not really necessary for you to toss them around. And also, if we want them to be separated throughout our whole cooking process, if you stir them up, you're gonna have to re-separate them and it's just more work for you. So very simple, you don't have to stir them up as they're cooking. They're perfectly roasted, 25 minutes, 400 degrees in our oven. So I'm just gonna throw our Brussels sprouts into our pan, our little bowl here. And then we are gonna toss them with some other things as well. And these are just so crunchy. They have so much flavor. One of those things that I tend to not cook at home as often as I really should. And every time I eat them, I'm like, these are so good. I need to make these more frequently. All right, so the other thing that we have is cranberries, or those craisins. So I did actually rehydrate these craisins. You just put them in a pot and bring your water to a boil. Once it's boiling, take it off of the heat, pour your cup of craisins in there, and just let it sit for 10 minutes so that it begins to rehydrate. So it just kind of plumps them up a little bit more, and the benefit of that is that there's a little bit more bite, a little bit more flavorful in each bite of your Brussels. So I am gonna try to avoid getting that water in there because there's still a little bit of excess water that has drained out of my craisins, so I'm gonna just try to avoid that and add all of that to our bowl here. So pretty, you've got the green and the red. It just looks like holidays and very, very appealing to the eye. So then we also are gonna add our pecans. Now, our recipe calls for you to toast these, so you could put them in the oven for about 5 minutes, or you could toast them on the stovetop. I just avoided that step. Now, toasting does help to bring out a nuttier flavor in any of the nuts that you're doing. Really kind of adds an extra touch. But as I mentioned, this is things that you prep ahead, right? So this could be something that you then throw it on your pan. You're gonna heat this all up for 5, maybe 10 minutes in the oven. And that's when your pecans will get a little bit of that roasting happening there. So this is super simple. You could also leave out things like the cranberries if you want to, and add those the day of. But it will work just as good to go ahead and do this all together at once and then just heat it up all at the same time. Last thing we have is our bacon. Now, we cooked all of this ahead of time. I did this on the pan, did the oven bacon, where you just throw it in your oven at around 400 degrees, cook it for about 20 minutes, and it's done. And I love to just put make it your whole batch of bacon, put it in a Ziploc bag, and then freeze it, and you can pull out a little piece at a time. Now, our recipe calls for 4 pieces of bacon. The only thing with that is bacon does have a good amount of saturated fat, so we are just gonna kind of lighten that up a little bit, and we did about 2 pieces of bacon, 2 to 3 pieces of bacon here. It was broken up a little bit, so that's why I say 2 to 3. But you just want enough, and you also just want to make sure that you are really chopping it up thoroughly. That way you get a little bit of bacon in every bite, and everybody loves bacon. So once you get a little bit of that in every bite, you know it's going to be a crowd favorite. And the reason why we just want to kind of watch some of that saturated fat with our bacon, it's very high in saturated fat. So by just lightening that up somewhat, you're going to have a healthier dish, especially when we're serving something like vegetables. We don't want to load it down with things that aren't quite as good for us. We still want it to stay in that healthy category. So I'm just going to throw this on top. All right, and then I'm gonna actually move this. You just mix it all together. Super tasty. Now, the recipe also calls for a little bit of salt. Honestly, the bacon to me is salty enough that you don't necessarily need that. But if you want to, you could add just a pinch of salt there so that you've got a little flavor. And the salt will actually help to bring out the sweetness of the cranberries as well. So we'll just do a very small amount of salt here. And there you go, super simple. Key would be that you would want to be able to reheat this wherever you're going, or even if it's at your house, be able to reheat that. So I would take it with you cold and then reheat it as you get there. Now, some other things that are really great as things that you can make ahead for Thanksgiving are going to be things like any of your desserts. Most of them can be frozen, especially pies and things of that nature. So you could make pies ahead of time and then freeze them, pull them out the night before to let them thaw, and heat them up if they're a warm pie, or leave it cold, leave it room temperature, chilled if that's what kind of pie. It depends on what you're making. That's a really easy thing, and they're also easy to tote. I was thinking about making mini pumpkin pies today, but it was just a little bit too much for all that we have time for here on set. So we skipped that one, but there's a lot of desserts that you can do ahead of time. Salads or anything like we did that rice salad, those are easy to tote. So think about things that you can travel pretty easily with in a cooler. And typically, if they don't have a dressing, not like the wild rice salad, but if you had a regular salad with greens, typically, if you don't put the dressing on there and you make it ahead of time, it'll be okay for another day. So you could make that ahead as well. So those are some really good things that you can make ahead, be able to tote with you. Casseroles are also some of those things that you can freeze depending on what's all in them. So hopefully that helps you as you prep for Thanksgiving, for the holidays. I know it's a little bit different this year, but I hope that you have a great Thanksgiving. Enjoy your time with your family, and we will see you back next week.